Displaying photos from an event and showcasing projects in a portfolio are just a couple of the many reasons to include an image gallery in a website. You should definitely know how to create an image gallery and how to ensure the page with the gallery loads as quickly as possible. Here I have a folder of images. These images are already edited for the web, with most of the images being less than 300 kilobytes. Ensuring the file size of images are as small as possible while maintaining a desired level of quality appropriate for display on digital devices is important. But it is not the focus of this video. In the Thumbs folder, I have cropped the images to be square and reduced the image dimensions to 281px by 281px. These smaller thumbnail images have even a smaller file size. Finally, the index.html page is just a web page that I have started that will display all of the images in a gallery. You may download these files under the video to work along. Open index.html in an editor. The page currently has a level 1 heading and a div with an ID of gallery. In the gallery div are the IMG elements linking to the image files saved in the images folder. There is no CSS, so when you view the page in a web browser, the images appear at the full size in which they are saved, and the gallery div is not visible. Most of the larger images were taken with my cell phone. This pink and white image was a result of adding a Photoshop filter, and the smaller images were created with an app called Picasso. In the code, add an internal style sheet. Inside the style tags, create a style for the div with an ID of gallery. By default, the div already is stretching to the same width as the body. Set the background color to black and the padding to 1% so the gallery div will be visible. Create a style for the images that are inside the gallery div. For now, just set the width of each image to 25% of the width of the parent element, the gallery div, so that there will be 4 images displayed in each row. After saving and refreshing the page, you see there are only 3 images per row instead of 4. The images do change sizes when the window resizes, and not all images have the same height, creating some unappealing space above the shorter images. Back to the code. We could specify a height for the images, but since we already set the width, this would cause them to be stretched. Instead, use the thumbnail images that were cropped and sized to all have the same width and height. Press Ctrl F and type in images. Click the Find All button so you can change all instances at the same time. Delete images and replace it with thumbs. Save and refresh the page. Now the images tile much better, but there are still only 3 in each row. The reason for this can be detected by selecting portions of the page. You can see between the images that there is actually a space that is being selected. It is the addition of these spaces to the gallery div that is making 4 images not fit next to each other. Looking back at the code, you can see that there is a line break and several tabs between each IMG element. To a browser, consecutive spaces, tabs, and line breaks all reduce to a single space. One way to get rid of the unintended space is to remove all of these. While this is not an elegant solution in terms of code readability, it is effective. Looking at the page now, we see the space between images is gone. However, there is still a slight sliver of space under each image. To fix this, in the style for the gallery images, set the vertical align property from its default value of baseline to top, middle, or bottom. Any of these will work. This solution is one of many that may seem odd and is often found through online searches and collaboration with other web developers. When you save and refresh the page, you see the images take up the entire width of the gallery div, other than its padding. What if you did want some space between the images? To ensure you have control over the exact amount of space, and therefore control over how many images display in each row, you should do this using the margin property. In the style for the gallery images, set the margin to 0.5%. This will create a margin on every side of each image that is 0.5% of the width of the gallery div. Now that there is space being added around the images, the width of the image needs to be adjusted accordingly. In this case, the current 25% needs to be reduced by 1% down to 24%. That is 0.5% to adjust for the left margin and 0.5% to adjust for the right margin. When you save and refresh the page, the padding around the images appear. Because you use percents for units, the size of the images and the size of the margins between the images change as the window resizes. As the window becomes smaller, the images become too small. This would not look so great on a mobile phone. Take a moment to adjust the number of images in each row for various screen sizes. Set a media query for all devices where the max width is 1000 px. Within this media query, create a style for the images in the gallery div and set the width to 49%. The other 1% is taken up by the left and right margins that were set previously. Now there will be 4 images per row when the screen is over 1000 pixels wide, and 2 images per row when the width is 1000 pixels or less. Copy and paste this media query to create a style for even smaller devices. When the size of the screen is 600 px or less, display only 1 image per row by setting their widths to 99%. Now the number of images per row adjusts for various screen sizes. The styles outside the media queries are applied regardless of the screen size unless overridden by code in the media queries. So go to the CSS code for the images that is outside of the media queries to set the border radius to 50%. Looking back at the page, you can see this added a border radius that was half the width of the images. This is sometimes desirable, but in this case, a very small border radius may be more appropriate. Change the border radius to 5%. Let's also create a hover effect for the images in the gallery div and set the opacity of the images to 1. This is equivalent to 100% opaque, which is the default for IMG elements and the reason you cannot see through them. Set the opacity of images that are not being hovered over to 0.6, which is 60% opaque or 40% transparent. Save and refresh. You can see the images are darker now because they are partially transparent and placed over a black background. As images are hovered over, the opacity returns to 100%. This results in a brighter image because none of the black background is coming through. Maybe you don't like changing the opacity. Go back to the code to try a different hover effect. Remove the 2 lines you just added for opacity. Change the margin of the gallery images to be padding. This will have no effect on the layout because there will still be the same amount of spacing around the images, simply using the padding instead of the margin. The reason for making the change is so that you can change the color of the space when the image is hovered over. In the CSS for the hover effect, set the background color to yellow. By default, the background color of the image is transparent, so you will only see the black div behind the image when it is not being hovered over. Save and refresh the page to test it out. Now a bright yellow outline appears over any image that is hovered over. Play around with the content and the style of the image gallery to your heart's desire. Once you have it looking just right, then you will be ready to focus on functionality. What happens when you click on an image to select it? That will be the topic of the next video. For now, my friends, that is all I have to say about creating an image gallery.